A gardener had worked all spring planting a beautiful garden. But just before the flowers were ready to bloom, a violent storm was swept through. In the morning, every stem was bent, every petal torn, every bit of soil washed away. The gardener stood there, broken-hearted, thinking, it's over. Yet instead of giving up, she quietly began to replant and to tend to the ruined soil. Weeks later, new life began to push through, stronger, deeper roots than before. And by midsummer, the garden that looked ruined had become more colorful than she had ever planned. Life can feel like that storm. Something happens, a loss, a failure, a heartbreak, and it seems the story has ended. But God, the midnight gardener, keeps working in the dark places, bringing beauty out of what looked beyond repair. The story isn't over. It's just being rewritten by grace. Lent is a season when we remember that the darkest moment in history, the crucifixion of Jesus, looked like the end. It looked like defeat. It looked like the world was saying checkmate. But God still had one more move. Our scriptures today from Proverbs, from John's Gospel, from Exodus, they remind us that no power, no enemy, no darkness, no Pharaoh, no cross, no grave can outmaneuver the purposes of God. Exodus 15 is a song sung on the far side of the Red Sea. It's a song sung by a people who thought they were trapped. Pharaoh behind them, the sea before them. No escape, no options, no hope. But God still had one more move. Moses and the Israelites sing, in the greatness of your majesty, you overthrew your adversaries. Who is like you, O Lord? The enemy thought they had the Israelites cornered, but God opened a way where there was no way. There's a famous engraving by Moritz Legretsch called Checkmate. A young man is playing chess with the devil. The stakes are his soul. The young man looks defeated. The devil leans back, confident, smirking. The title again is Checkmate. The story goes that a world-class chess master once stood before the painting for a while. Finally, he said to the curator, the title is wrong. It's not Checkmate. The king still has one more move. That's the message of Exodus 15. When Pharaoh said checkmate, God said, watch this. When the waters blocked the way, God said, I still have one more move. When the cross looked like the end, God said, I still have one more move. Proverbs tells us, no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. In other words, you can plan, you can scheme, you can strategize, you can marshal all the power you want, but God's purposes cannot be blocked. Pharaoh learned that. Rome learned that. The grave learned that. There's a story from the Midwest about a farmer whose land bordered a river. One year the river rose and threatened to wash away his fields. He built barriers, stacked sandbags, worked day and night, but the river kept rising. Finally exhausted, he said to his neighbor, "I've done everything I can do. The river will do what the river will do." The neighbor replied, "Yes, but God will do what God will do." That's Proverbs 21. Human strength has limits. Human wisdom has boundaries. But God's purposes flow like a river that cannot be dammed. And at the cross, when human power tried to stop Jesus, God's river of redemption broke through. On Good Friday, the world saw defeat. The disciples saw failure. Rome saw victory. Hell saw triumph. But heaven saw something else. Heaven saw the King preparing his final move. The cross was not the end. The grave was not the end. Death was not the end. God still had one more move. Jesus said, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." A seed in the ground looks dead. It looks buried. It looks finished. But beneath the soil, God is working. Life is stirring. Roots are forming. A resurrection is coming. The crucified Christ was the seed. The resurrection was the fruit. The world said, "Checkmate." And God said, "Watch the stone rolled away." Arrived at the tomb, and to my surprise, I can't believe I see what's before my very eyes. I remember he said something about the third day. And today the tomb is empty and the stone is rolled away. Roll it away, roll it away. Roll away that stone for me. My heart is troubled, but I yearn to be free. Lord, roll away that stone for me. Where do you feel cornered today? Where do you feel like the story is over? Where do you feel like your enemy has whispered in your ear, "Checkmate"? The God of Exodus 15, the God of Proverbs 21, the God of the crucified and risen Christ is the God who still has one more move. When your strength is gone, God still has one more move. When your hope is thin, God still has one more move. When your prayers feel unanswered, God still has one more move. When the world feels dark, God still has one more move. When the grave seems final, God still has one more move. Lent is the season we walk towards the cross. But we walk knowing that the cross is not the end. The King still has one more move. So today, hear the good news. The God who opened the sea, the God who overrules human power, the God who raised Jesus from the dead, is the God who's not finished with you. When life says checkmate, God says, not so fast, my friend. The King has one more move. God of resurrection power, when the world declares defeat, you whisper victory. When the cross casts its shadow, you shine with light of redemption. When we see no way forward, you move in ways we could never imagine. Thank you for reminding us today that the story is never over when you are at work. When you are at work, you are the King who still has one more move in our grief, in our struggle, in our waiting. Send us forth in courage, trusting not in our own strength, but in your unstoppable grace. Let this Lenten journey deepen our faith, renew our hope, and teach us to watch for your faithful move even in the darkest hour. We go now in the name of Christ, crucified, risen, reigning, our King, who always has one more move. Amen.